We are on page 2. Let us begin at the beginning, and we'll start with a question from the very beginning. By the way, we'll be looking at Hebrew words as we go through. Now we're going to go through the Hebrew and the English of the sources. Once in a while I'm going to put a Hebrew word on the board. That word you should write down with a translation and learn it. It's most likely going to appear in your midterm, and if not in the midterm, then possibly the final, okay? So this isn't a strong Hebrew class, but as we're going to learn, Hebrew is going to be very, very important in order to understand certain ideas, principles, thoughts, as we go through the course, okay? So not just learning Hebrew because, hey, let's learn Hebrew, it's all pun. Hebrew in this class is going to be revealing certain ideas to you, okay? So as we go through, you'll see more of that, okay? Let me ask a question. First question of the semester, Juds 101. Who was the first Jew? Not all at once, take it easy. Who was the first Jew? Is that a fair question? Let's write it down. Yeah, shout out, don't be shy. I bet everyone starts like this. First class, first semester, everyone's quiet. Not really. By the 5th class you'll be shouting, and by the 15th class you'll be heckling. Who's the first Jew? Give me it again. Just throw it out. Adam, okay. Is that a friend of yours from North Shore? Adam, is he like... Oh, the original Adam, you mean? The original... Oh, where did you get into? North, I'm sorry. Is that one of your friends from North?
Yeah.
You had an Adam in your class, did you?
Okay.
Okay, but you mean the first ever Adam, right? Yeah. Adam HaRishon, the first ever Adam. Okay. Who else? Yeah. Abraham. Yeah, anybody else? Isaac. Yitzchak, okay. Anyone else? We're just like naming Jews from the Bible right now. So you're trying to, you know, eventually we'll hit the right answer. Put your hands up if you think the answer's on the board already. Put your hands up if you think the answer is on the board already. Put your hands up if you think the answer is not on the board yet. Moses. Interesting that all of you are choosing men. Eve. Well done. Just throw a woman's name out there. If you do Eve, you might as well do Sarah, right? We throw her in as well, since we're doing lists of people. Who was the first Jew? Adam and Eve, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Eve. Who thinks the answer's on the board? Who thinks the answer is not on the board yet? So everyone's convinced that the answer to that question is on the board. I'm going to share something amazing with you. Technically, the answer is not on the board. But it's a bit of a trick question. So the question is, what makes a person Jewish? That's not rhetorical. I'll take an answer. We go to Jewish women's college. What makes someone Jewish? Their belief in Hashem. So if a Christian priest walked in and said, I believe in Hashem, does that make him Jewish? And he says, you know, I've decided to believe in your religion, and I believe Jesus as well. He's Jewish?
Not if he believes in Jesus as well.
Okay, he's like, I give up on Jesus. I believe in being Jewish.
Did
Then
he
what?
convert?
What?
Did he convert?
Yeah, alright. He's in. So what about us? How about the rest of us who didn't convert? Did you convert?
No.
Nothing wrong if you did, I'm just asking. But why?
Because we follow the mitzvah and like the...
We follow the mitzvah. And if you have a Jew that doesn't follow mitzvah, are they Jewish? They most certainly are Jewish.
Sure.
They're Jewish. They're Jewish. I like that, yeah. Yeah.
No,
Just give me your name, 'cause I'm still learning your name. What's your name again?
Ruth.
Ruth, yes.
I was going to say they follow the law in the Torah. But
They follow the law of the Torah, but we already
Yeah.
answered over here that that's not going to be sufficient, right?
They were born from Jewish woman, but I was
Okay, they're going from a Jewish mother. Okay, now we're getting close. So what made her Jewish?
You like have a part of this.
Wow, that's a good Sephardi answer. Part of Hashem inside you.
I learned that in
Uh,
national school.
Good. All humans have a part of God. Everyone's made in the image of God, Jew and non-Jew. And how do you even prove that? Is there a certificate that comes with that?
Just believe.
Just believe. These are good questions, by the way. Is believing in what? We've got to find out. Is just believing or having faith, is that sufficient to make you Jewish? Is that it? I could walk in, I believe the Lord has saved me. I must be Jewish. Is that good enough? Ruth, what do you think? What's your name again?
Yeah.
Batya, what do you think? That's one of my daughter's names, actually. Well, Batya. Do you know who Batya was in the Bible, by the way? Who was she? Pharaoh's daughter, yeah. You know she converted to Judaism, or converted us, actually. A holy woman. Yeah, these are good things. Having belief and faith is good. We have to find what that even means. But we still didn't answer our question. We got close, though. And by the way, what you were saying was true, by the way. I mean, all of you are correct. But that's not really the answer. So what we're going to see, my friends, is that Judaism began at a moment. A singular moment, 3,328 years ago, when the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai. Who was the first Jew? Unlike every other religion we're going to see, where their religions began with one person, and invariably a male, who was usually by himself, and was told that he is the chosen one to begin a religion, Judaism, we're going to see, is very different. That it began with about 3 million men, women, and children standing at Mount Sinai. How we got to Mount Sinai, and what, that's not the hospital on the Upper East Side, by the way. Okay? Before it was a hospital, it was a place in the Sinai Desert. Where exactly, we're not too sure, and that's also important. We're not so interested in the location anymore. But anyway, so we became Jewish at that moment. So what were we before then? Well, we were Hebrews. We were Hebrews. Now, I know Hebrews sounds like a kind of Jewish beer, right? Hebrew, you know?
Oh, I understand the trick question now.
You getting it? It wasn't a trick question. It was tricky, but it wasn't a trick question. It was a real question. It was a real question. I don't do trick questions, but it was tricky. It was tricky. So at one point, at one moment, we're going to talk about later on in the semester, we became the Jewish people. Okay? It happened at a moment, and it happened to a lot of people at the same time. All of your ancestors. Actually, if someone converted, they couldn't say even their ancestors, but it's as though it was their ancestors, as we'll see. It's very unusual. When a person converts, they're considered to be part of the Jewish people 100%. In terms of all the mitzvot. They even talk and speak and refer to things as though their ancestors were part of it. They've become part of our national heritage. It's a very unusual thing that we do. Why is another interesting question. That's not for now. So even a convert can say that. But the rest of us can say, so what were we before that moment? Before we got to, now by the way, does everyone here know how to read Hebrew script yet? Everyone know how to read Hebrew? If you don't be shy. This is Jaws 101. Yeah? You don't know how to do that? Okay. So everyone when they write Hebrew, everyone writes in Hebrew script. That's just the way it is. So it's pretty easy. What we're going to do is I'll speak to Mr. Schechter. We'll basically set you up with a learning partner, or you can just literally go online and look at it yourself and just learn them. I'm going to write in Hebrew script because that's the way everyone writes. Write it down, and you'll see it. Some of the letters are similar, and eventually you'll get it. But it's like one of those things. It'll take you like an hour to kind of like figure out what's going on. It's very, very quick. So I wouldn't worry. It happens very often. People who come to this level class don't know it. but no one writes really block script anymore. So I'm doing it not to torture you or irritate you, I'm doing it so that you get used to it, okay? So we'll start doing that already, okay? So we'll do Har Sinai. Har Sinai, right? Which translates to Mount Sinai. Now, that expression, Mount Sinai, is not a reference to the place, it's a reference to what happened at the location in the Jewish year 2448. By the way, this is the only year you're going to have to really learn. 2448. When you do history class, you're going to have to learn tons of years. When you do art history, wow, are you in for a treat? Art history at Stern College for women is dates and dates and dates and dates. Okay? In this class, the years aren't that important. That's the only year you're going to have to learn. 2448. That's the Jewish year. Okay. However, what you are going to have to learn, as we'll see, is dates within the year. Where we are in the Hebrew calendar. That's really important. We'll see why. Not just to figure out when the Jewish holidays occur, but because those dates are going to have a lot of impact on what you do at those times. You understand the difference? Year is one thing, but the months of the year and the dates within the months is really important. But that's not for now, we'll do that later as well. This is just introduction. Okay? So before we became Jewish, which happened at this point, Har Sinai, we were Hebrews. Right? How do you say Hebrew in Hebrew? You got the question? What? Ivrit, right? How about the person? That's the language. How about the person? Is a Ivri. Ivri. Okay? Ivri and Ivri. Ein vet resh yud. Ivri. Okay. So now we're going back, right? We kind of stopped at a certain point and we went backwards. You with me? We went back. We got to Mount Sinai, and we went back, and we started to see the people who eventually got to Mount Sinai. But where did they come from? Well, they went back to one person, and his name was Abraham. And Abraham had a wife called, shout it out, don't be shy if you know it, Sarah. Right. So now we have Abraham, and we have Sarah. Now Abraham was a direct descendant, as we're going to see, of someone called Adam. Whether it was a person or a genre, it's not for now, but that's where he came from. So he got this whole thing going. His descendants, that means his children's children, eventually, not all of them by the way, not all of them, but many of them got to Mount Sinai. Many of them became non-Jewish, many of them just disappeared. But through his lineage, we got to Mount Sinai. So we're connecting over here, Abraham and this event, although he never got there, and technically speaking, he wasn't Jewish. Because what makes you Jewish is this point, being obligated in the mitzvot, in the laws of the Torah. And the Torah was given, here's the punchline, out Mount Sinai. The Torah, and what Torah is we'll discuss. Don't worry, we're going to figure that out. But the Torah was given at Mount Sinai. That's when the Jewish people began in earnest as a nation, as an Am Yisrael. It started at that point. Before then, there were very many great and amazing men and women, spiritual giants. But they weren't really Jewish because they weren't obligated in the Torah. Now, there are traditions in Judaism we're going to see that maybe they did know certain mitzvot, and they were commanded in some. We know that Abraham was given a circumcision, and he circumcised his children and grandchildren. So we know there were certain mitzvot. But as a collective whole, being Jewish didn't begin in that year in this place. 49 days after leaving Egypt. And that's going to be important. That's going to be important. We're going to come to that. Okay, wow. We have learned so much already. Half an hour of class with Rabbi Hedjiaf, and all these myths have been dispelled, and we've learned so much. So what we're going to do with the first part of the semester is we're going to go chronologically. We're going to start over here by Abraham, because he did something. And he did something really, really, together with his wife Sarah. As a couple, they did something really, really big. And it must be big, because there are millions, actually, that's not true, there are billions of people walking around the earth today, and over history obviously even more, who say, we come from the spiritual legacy of Abraham and Sarah. And they mean it to Abraham, or Ibrahim, or Abraham, whatever it is. They'll be like, well, he did his what? They got it right. So whatever they did back then, thousands of years ago, must have been like mega, right? That's just like common sense. Is this making sense to you? Probably at any point you stop ask questions. Is that a question, Ruth?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so Abraham is Aleph, Resh.
Aleph? Oh, sorry.
Isn't it like...
Abraham. Sorry, I was talking, I was writing. Abraham and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah. I should know because it's my second Hebrew name. Okay? Questions? Are we good? Are we cool? Is this good over here? Okay, so we're going to take a laser pointer, and for the first few classes, we are going to laser point in, and we're going to go boom, and go up here. We're going to see what this Abraham's all about. Because according to us, he was a spiritual giant that started the process of the Jewish people coming into being a nation. You understand? The question that each and every one of you should have at this point is, when does class finish so I can get to the cafe ready? Besides that question, what question at this point should you be asking? Based upon the following information. Abraham was very, very great. He did some amazing, what we're going to see what he did. He was amazing. By the way, what he did was, he was tested and passed his tests. That's what made him great. But we'll come to that later on. The Jewish people didn't start for over 1,000 years later. What's the obvious question? The Jewish people were given the Torah in this place, on this date, at that time. What's the obvious question you should have at this point? Yeah.
Why they didn't start 1,000 years later?
Right. Say even better. You're saying good, say better. Why didn't they begin right away with Abraham and his wife? And that obvious question, right? Very good. Excellent. Why don't you just begin over here? But anyone at this point, I know it's early days, have a guess. Have a guess. Why do you think? Why do you think? It's a tricky question. Not a trick question, but a tricky one. Why didn't we begin over here? Abraham was Jewish. We refer to him as Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu. Abraham, our father. Av is father. Nu is us, plural. Plural. When you see nu at the end of a word, it's plural. Avinu, our father. Avi, my nu, our father. That's what we refer to him. That means we come genealogically through him. Spiritually, we connect to him too. We don't refer to him as Avraham HaYehudi. We don't call him that. Actually, that word's going to come many years later. The word Jewish didn't even exist at this point. It's hinted at in the Torah, but it doesn't exist as Yehudi, Jewish. That's much later. We'll see why it comes later and where the word comes from. And Sarah Imenu, Sarah our mother. That's how they're referred to. Aim is mother, Imma, right? Imenu. Avraham Avinu, Sarah Imenu. It's pretty good, right? The father and mother of the Jewish people. It's pretty cool. That means they were your great grandparents. But they're more than just genealogical. So here's the question. Why don't we just say Abraham's the first Jew? What do you think the answer to that question would be? Have a guess. Come on. Tough question, actually. Maybe a little unfair at this point. It's okay, you're thinking. That's what this is about, right? Yeah.
Because it would seem like God chooses just one of us and not the whole nation.
Says Ruth Levi Abitbol, let's say this whole Jewish thing would have started with one person. What might you have thought? What might you have thought? He was a really special guy, and he gets to be Jewish. And it's all about one person. And he was like a really amazing speaker and dictator, and that's how he did it. Which is how every other religion in world history began. They say in world history there's been 25,000 religions, sects, and cults. It's a lot. They all begin the same way. We don't. I know it sounds a little cutesy, but it's really important and makes a big difference in how we relate to our Judaism, our spirituality, to God. Very, 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 very different. Even our personalities are very like this. You'll see why later. This will all make sense. Yeah. If you have an answer, yeah. Because people... Okay, so... Okay, we were also dictated to, but by God directly, as a nation. See, that's the difference. You see, we had to begin, we started small, very humble beginnings. We move. We become a nation in Egypt. We leave Egypt as a nation, and then we see the Torah as a nation. In Hebrew, an as an Yisrael Chai, as a nation. That's important. It's a national thing. It's not just an individual thing. You don't just sit by yourself and worship. We are a nation. Now that has to be understood as well, because if you're a nation, you need to have certain things. You need to have a common language. You need to have a common land. You need to have common laws, right? I mean, how do you make a nation? It starts with one person or maybe a small group of people. Are you following? Is it making sense? Are we getting some formation? I want to close the circle. Yeah.
Is the reason why we started...
Speak loudly, man. You have a lovely, beautiful voice, but it's a little slight.
Is the reason why we started with the nation, not with one person like Abraham? Because in the future they didn't want us to worship one person like Abraham.
Very, very good. That's definitely part of it. You could worship one person or doubt one person. But doubting 3 million people is tough. Yes, absolutely. There's many answers to this question. Absolutely, you write that down. Very, very good. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get into the brain of Avram Avinu. How can we do that? I want to figure out what he was thinking. What was he thinking? What was going on in his life? Right? What does the Torah say? So in order to answer that question, we have a very nice biographical piece by somebody called the Rambam. The Rambam. Who was the Rambam? Who here has heard of the Rambam? Put your hands up if you've heard of the Rambam. Not all of you. Ruth heard of the Rambam before? Okay, great, you're in the right place. Rambam, we're going to be hearing a lot from him. Actually, right through your Jewish career, through your Jewish life. And by the way, even up to this point, you've heard a lot of Jewish ideas. They've come from him. Okay? The Rambam. And he lived in... Ruth, where are you from? Spain. Where was the Rambam from? Yes. He lived in Egypt for a lot of his life, but he was from Spain as well. Look at that. You could be a direct descendant of his. Who knows? The Rambam. Rambam is what we call an acronym, and the full name is Rabbi Moshe Ben Maimon. You've heard the name Maimon before? There's a lot of Moroccan Jews with Maimon, the name Maimon. Okay? In Greek, he's referred to as Maimonides. You'll hear the reference, it's referring to the same person. So Rambam is Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. There's someone else who's a different person who lived around the same time, is also a Rishon, called the Ramban. That's not this guy. The Rambam did something very, very incredible. And actually, as far as I know, he's the only person in Jewish history that ever did this. He took all of Judaism, the entire Talmud, well that is we'll see, the entire Bible, and he wrote it into one set of books as a law book. He created one set of books and written very nicely and neatly, and that book is called the Mishnah Torah. Which means the repetition or the doubling up of the Torah, Mishnah Torah. See, he took the entire book and he said, I'm going to divide it into sections. He's got a section called Shabbat. He's got a section called Purim. Right? He's got a section on Hanukkah. He's got a section on Kosher. He's got a section on Jewish holidays. He's got a section on everything. He divided it very nicely, neat into different sections. Right, got Jewish holidays and times and laws and Beit HaMikdash. And he made it one book out of it. And this, by the way, at the time was very, very controversial. Because he was saying, you don't need all the other books. Just read my book and you'll know what to do as a Jew. However, history has decided that he's great. The Rambam is considered to be like incredible. He was Sephardi, and his writings are considered to be very, very important. Very easy to read. Not all his books, by the way. But the Mishnah Torah is, and he just kind of lists the laws. Boop, boop, boop. This you do, that you can't do. We don't always follow him, unless you're Yemenites. The Yemenites, by the way, the Yemenite Jews love the Rambam. Any Yemenites here? Yemenite Jews love the Rambam. He saved their lives spiritually. He used to write letters to them and was involved in them, with them. So you'll see Yemenite Jews really far. I'll give you a little hint of this. Anyone here, you eat bread during the week or on Shabbat? What do we do before we eat bread? We wash our hands, right? And then we, with a vessel, right? If you're Ashkenazi, you may do 2 on each hand. If you're Sephardi, you do 3 on each hand. 1 is actually enough, but we want to do a lot of water. Why? There's another discussion. It's a good thing to do. It brings a lot of blessing, right? We want to have lots and lots of water. Yemenite Jews, well, the rest of us, before we eat the bread, what do? We don't talk, right? We don't talk. Very difficult mitzvah for Jewish people. Not to talk for 2 minutes. And for Persians, even harder, right? Because we have what to say. Nachon? Yemenite Jews follow the Rambam and they talk. They don't see it as an interruption between the two. The Rambam's got laws and everything. Some we follow, some we don't follow. But his rights, everyone, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, wherever you are, the Rambam is kadosh, is holy. In this book called Mishnah Torah, he gets to a chapter called the laws of idol worship. Hilchot Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah. The laws of idol worship. What? How can that be? How can there be laws of idol worship? From what you know about Judaism so far, are we Jews into idol worship? No! We are not into idol worship. Then what are the laws of idol worship going to be? Mostly what you can't do. Places you can't go to, things you can't use, people you can't hang out, eat and drink with, business you can't get involved in, laws of Avodah Zarah. At the beginning of that book, the laws of idol worship, by the way, although we Jews aren't into idol worship, we are into American idol worship, which is also a problem. But anyway, at the beginning of this book, the Rambam stops and he says, let me tell you a little story. I want to tell you about this person called Abraham. And he gives a small biography of Abraham that I've printed for you in our books. What do you think? Why do you think at this point he decides to do a biography of Abraham? Why not the laws of Shabbat. You know, let's stop talking about Shabbat. Let's talk about Avraham Avinu. Why here? What do you think? Laws of idol worship. Pause. Let's discuss Abraham. It's not a trick question.
According to know our beginnings, he's like our beginnings, through him we can understand what happened.
But why in the laws of idol worship? Why are we connecting him to idol worship?
I feel like at that time, am I right, they were...
Exactly! That what you're going to say?
So that, like, his father.
Right. Remember a story about his father. Who was his father? His name was Terach. Terach was his name. And Terach was an idol worshiper. Do you know why? Because everyone was idol worshipping in those days. That's all they were doing. We have to figure out why. Why weren't they believing in God? We're going to find out in a moment. Actually, Terach wasn't only just an idol worshiper. He owned a business. An idol shop on 5th Avenue with only the greatest idols that he was selling. Sounds crazy, right? Well, see, it's not so crazy. These people weren't insane. They knew what they were doing. And we'll see, by the way, they didn't just worship idol. They did a lot of things that went with the idol. The idol was just like a representation of something. They worshipped it, but they did other things connected to it. Most prominently, do you know what idol worship involved in those days and actually still involves? Child sacrifice. Killing children in very weird, unusual, and disgusting ways. Which to us sounds crazy, but people are still doing it, aren't they? Aren't people blowing themselves up or allowing their children to blow themselves up for God? Right? We Jews have been the recipients, unfortunately, of a lot of that. We're going to see that Abraham's life mission was to stop that. To talk about sanctity of life. How did he do that? Well, he was all about monotheism. Mono is singular, theism, belief in God. He preached belief in one God. And that's really important. Because everyone else had many gods. Like tons of them. Tons and tons of them. So he was a monotheist. And really, when Abraham introduced into the world, if you actually want to really think about what the Jewish people are meant to be doing, because he started it, right? The Torah was just the avenue that we do it. Was ethical monotheism. Abraham was about ethical monotheism. That's what he was really all about. That was his life's work. And by the way, in that sense, he was very, very successful. And actually, if there's one thing the Jewish people have really brought to the world, besides wholesale shopping prices and bagel consumption, it's ethical monotheism. Believing one God and having an ethical code that goes with it. The Torah is our expression of that, how we relate to it. But in terms of influencing, impacting the world, that's it. Okay. So we had a question and we answered the question. We said the Rambam stops in the laws of idol worship and starts saying, let me talk about Abraham. Why? Because that's what Abraham was dealing with. He grew up an idol worshipper. He was a Baal Teshuvah. His father was an idol worshipper. The people around him were idol worshippers. And Abraham, we're going to see, had a big problem with that. And eventually took that problem up with his father. Now, I haven't brought the story down. It's a midrash. You may have heard this before, but I'll say it again. The story is told that, we'll get to how he got to this point, Abraham's father, Terach, told Abraham to watch his store. Anyone heard this story before? You heard this one before? Yeah. Okay, good. You're in the right place then. And his father said, I'm going out, watch the store. And Abraham at this point, we'll see why, had given up on idol worship. He knew it was completely false. That sounds familiar now. What did he do? He went, he took a hammer in his father's store and smashed all the idols. Except the biggest idol. And he put the hammer, he was a young boy when this happened, in the largest idol's hands. His father came back from his lunch break after having his, kebab and hummus on a lafa with tahina and harif. And he said, Avram, what do you do? Actually, at that point, his name wasn't Avram, actually. He said, what did you do? And he said, I didn't do anything. The idol did it. I was like, don't be stupid. Just an idol. And he's like, exactly. And that was the beginning of a conversation with himself and his father. His father ended up changing. And changed his entire life belief based upon his son. Look at the impact children can have upon their parents. We sometimes don't appreciate that. That's the story of Avram and his father Terach. Why? Let's do one piece of Rambam today so we can actually learn some Hebrew inside. And this is chapter 1. So I'm going to follow in the Hebrew. You can follow me in the Hebrew. And you can jump to the other side as well, the English side. We're on page 2. Kevan shenigmal eitan zeh. After this prodigious, this powerful child was born and weaned, hitchil l'shote bedato. He started to think. His mind started to turn over. For katan, he was very young. There are different opinions how young he was. One opinion was he was 3 years old when he started to think about this. Not too bad for a 3-year-old kid, right? V'hitchil lachshov biyom uvelayla. He started to think day and night, day and night. Vayatmeya, and he started to wonder. Heach efsha sheyeh hagilgal hazeh. How can it be that this incredible world, this planet, and all the planets around us, noek tamid v'lo yeh ba manhig, and no one's running them? They just like came around by themselves and turned by themselves and don't fly off to space on a perfect straight course. So I don't get it. How could this be? How could this be, this amazing, perfect, incredible world that we see around us and no one made it? How is that possible? Second paragraph. V'lo haya lo melamed v'lo modia davar. He had no mentor because he had no father who was going to teach him, and there was no rabbis out there or any good, decent people out there who were going to teach him. Ella mushka b'or kasdim. He lived in Or Kasdim, which is in modern-day Iraq. Bain ovdei kochavim hatipshim, among foolish people who are idol worshippers. Actually, the word ovdei kochavim literally means worshippers of the stars. That's the literal translation. That's the general term for an idol worshipper. Star worshippers. There are many religions that were founded upon star worship. Okay. By the way, that's why he's considered one of the greatest people in history, because he had to figure out himself. His son, Isaac, at least had his father. His grandson, Jacob, had his father and grandfather. But who did Abraham have? No one. He had to figure it out himself. By the way, if he can figure it out himself, so can we. He was just a kid, a regular person. He wasn't God, wasn't a prophet yet, just a regular person. His mother was, his father was, his whole community. So what did he do? Who over him? He worshipped with them. He worshipped with them. The libo, but his heart, it's interesting, it says his heart, but his mind, emotionally, he felt not right. Mushatet umevin ad sheyasig derech emet. He thought and thought, and he figured it out. A young kid could figure it out. It wasn't brain surgery. He didn't have a degree from the Sorbonne, from Harvard, from Yale, from Stern. Just a regular kid. And he's like, this doesn't make sense. And he figured out the right path. That there's one God. that God doesn't want us to kill each other. He doesn't want us to kill our children for God. The Yeda Sheyesh Sham Elokan, he figured out that there's a supreming, omnipotent power. One singular power that runs everything. There's a unity that pervades the universe. A oneness that we know because we read Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. But he didn't have that pasuk in his Siddur. V'umaniga Gilgal, he's running the entire world. V'ubarakol, no, he created everything. There was a beginning. There was nothing, and then there was something. How he figured this out, I don't know. I can barely figure out what my keys are. But that's what he figured out. By the way, it's only recently, scientifically, we accept the fact that there was a beginning. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, people always say, no, there was no beginning, there just always was. Jewish belief, as you know, is, in the beginning, there was nothing, and then there was something. And God created that something. That's the first verse in the Bible. And everyone else is worshipping things that are not true. That's what he figured out. Go to the second paragraph. Kevan shekir v'yedei tchila shiv teshuvat al b'nei or kastim. He recognized the existence of this God, and he began to challenge his people. He had conversations with them, right? Typical Jew, getting into arguments, theological arguments with people. It's like, what are you doing? And like, what are you doing? No, what are you doing? Can't you see the world? It's a beautiful world, it's incredible. By the way, you stop for a moment. How did he do all this? How did he do all this? Did he go around with a stick hitting people? Is that how he learned how Abraham changed? Did he take a gun or a sword or a rock and bang people on the head to share this information with them? Is that how he learned Judaism began? What did he do? How did he share this important information that he figured out? He held classes like I'm doing. Where did he hold these classes?
In the middle of a grassland farm.
In his tent. In the middle of nowhere, wherever people were. And what did he do when he taught the class? Did he shout at people? Did he scream at them? Did he slap them? Did he say, believe what I believe or I'm going to kill you? Did he say that? How did he do it? Bachi, what did Abraham do to get people to be interested in his message? Was he mean or was he nice? This is really important, by the way. This is really, really important. He was nice. Very nice. He was so nice that he fed people for free. That's how he did it. He didn't threaten to kill you if you don't believe what I believe. He invited people into his tent. His wife and himself made lots and lots of delicious food. By the way, this isn't some nice story. This is in the Torah itself. The Torah introduces us to Abraham not by this. We're not told of Abraham as a young boy. Those are stories we have and from the Gemara, but the Torah itself introduces us as a person, as we're going to see, that did nice things to people. That's going to be very important to connect. It's not two separate. He happened to be a nice guy who fed guests, and he happened to believe in God. No, that's not two separate things. That's one reality. They are intertwined. They are connected. It's not a coincidence that he happened to be, well, he could have been a mass murderer who preached God. He could have been. There are lots of people in history who've done that. That's not how we began. The Jewish people began with Abraham, and he spent his whole life doing nice stuff to lots of people. Some of those people were not nice at all. He didn't care. He did nice things to them, and he fed them, and he gave them shelter, and he escorted them. He gave them the best food he had and the best bed. And when they were in his tent, and why a tent and not a house, we'll see. That's also important. He would eat with them, and he would get into conversations and talk God and theology, and they would argue, and then he influenced them, and he changed them, and he created thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. And all of history is being changed from this person and his wife by the food he gave them, by the bed he let them sleep in, and by the discussions about God that he had with them. That's how he did it. That's really important. Because he could have said, believe what I believe, or I'm going to stab you. He could have done that. Would that have worked? Would that have worked? Yup, it would have worked. They would have said, fine, we'll believe because we have a gun to our heads. That works, right? Others tried it and they were successful. He said that's not the way. That's not what this whole God thing is about. It's being merciful to people. Okay, we're going to stop over there. We've done a lot today. We're going to revisit this one point next class, God willing. And we will continue our journey of Abraham, Sarah, to see how we ended up at Mount Sinai. Fantastic class, everyone. You were amazing, as was I. Have a good and successful day.